Hey, we're live. All right. So, hey everybody, it's me, Peter, and I am here with the most excellent, most delightful, Sarah Urist Green.
Hey, so good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, for those of you who don't know, I'll just give you a quick introduction. So, Sarah is a wonderful human who is a curator and an artist and the host of the PBS Digital Studios channel, The Art Assignment. But the context of today is that she also wrote a delightful book called You Are an Artist, which is basically that book right there. Which is basically, if you haven't seen the art assignment before, the book is a book version of the channel, which is just the best thing. And then from a more, I guess, personal point of view, I blame Sarah as being the person who really got me to start appreciating art, not just like at a superficial, like, oh, that looks nice, but like engaging in the artistic process every now and then, and like really being able to go to an art museum and really like just be in it and enjoy it. So that's who we have.
All right. It makes me very happy to hear that
Oh yeah.
because like I want people to make art, but like I also have the not secret ulterior motive of wanting to improve your experience of other people's art. So that's it's all about in my mind, like the channel, the book, everything I do is about like shifting your mindset so that you're more receptive and more open to having a good experience with art when you come across it. If we ever come across art again, in public space,
I
but
mean,
it will happen.
yeah, I think so. But on the off chance that it doesn't, good news, someone just made a book to help address that.
It's true. You can make your own, or you can like go to Google Arts and Culture
Yeah.
and take a tour of an empty museum.
That was actually, so I have my copy here. I have the ebook version.
Oh, yay. Oh, good.
My
Great.
Yeah, my library has a copy, but
Yay.
unfortunately, even though I'm still technically a librarian, I can't get into the library because there's a crisis in the world. So it's
I've
for the
heard
best.
that.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if you've noticed,
Yeah.
but like, hasn't been a lot
It's
of.
real bad.
It's pretty
Yeah.
bad. I've noticed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
But we will get there.
We
We will
will.
get back. And how amazing is it that we live in a time where you can borrow an ebook from your library and
Yeah.
you can still have access to to reading even if you
Yeah.
don't have the physical book. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
yeah.
excellent point. You actually just said something that reminded me of a question that I wanted to ask you, and I totally forgot to put on my list. So I'm just going to ask you now. Um,
Great.
it's not, there's no context yet, but when we talk about art, I have a question, like as an individual, like to, does something that is art, does there have to be intention of it being art for it to be art, I guess? Which,
I don't, yeah, I don't think so. For me, the art is something that like exists in between things and people.
okay.
And it's a lot about how you interpret it. Like if you go into an art museum and you're looking at, if you're at the Met Museum in New York, and you're looking in the African art galleries. Like a lot of those objects weren't made to live in a gallery, they were made to be used. They were objects that had rituals and uses around them. But I think it's wonderful that like they can be appreciated in an entirely different context and be considered art, and the people who made them considered artists. And so, yeah, no, I don't think that the art like lives inside the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we decide what we want to call art and consider art. And
Excellent.
lots of people disagree,
True, very true. Yeah, the thing
and
that made me
that's
think about that,
fine.
it was how you were talking about, kind of flippantly, obviously, but like, will we ever see art again? Because like, I guess lots of people often think of art as like this thing that is external to them and something that they are detached from, um, and that like they experience, but that they don't do. And I guess that's kind of the whole point of the art assignment is to kind of flip that on its head, right?
Right, right. And there is art happening now. I mean, there's art happening now on the internet. There's art happening in public spaces. Like I was just one of the artists in the book, a London-based artist, Peter Liversidge. He's been making these signs in support of the NHS and displaying them around London. And there are things that are happening.
Hmm.
Clearly, it's just we can't go to the museum yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. If people wanted to find art online, I was wondering, do you know of any, like, I don't know, social media hashtag or something that people could use related to, I don't know, like a book that recently came out to find people?
yeah, well, I encourage people to use the hashtag you are an artist when they make art that's in response to the assignments that are in the book. So, that is for that. But for other hashtags, I mean, I'm a strategic hashtag follower, and
Hmm.
I'm more interested. Like I like to follow the accounts of artists,
Hmm.
not just the
Yes.
artists in the book, but because it like they go see other art and they're friends with other artists and
Hmm.
they post the art of their friends, and I find that like a much sort of more natural way. So like to discover new work. So if you know of one artist who you like, start following them, and then you'll notice who they mention, and then you follow them too. And I find that to be a better way to discover new work. So
Excellent.
yeah,
Cool. Great.
yeah,
Well, thanks.
sure.
So all of that for the viewers at home was totally unplanned. So let's go to the first question. Um,
Okay.
so this book is called "You Are an Artist," and so my
Yes.
question is, are you an artist?
I am an artist. I don't make money from my art. So I
Hmm.
think, a lot of people hesitate to call themselves artists because they're not, professional artists who are making work and earning money from it and marketing themselves as an artist. But I am definitely an artist. I make things as I go about my life, and I enjoy making art. I always have. That's how I got into this game. And so yeah, I am an artist, and I feel more. It's something that it's almost like an affirmation. Like if you say it, you start to believe it. But
Yeah.
it also, to me, to say that you are an artist or I am an artist, it sort of takes a little bit. It takes the figure of the artist off the pedestal a
Hmm.
little bit. I love artists. I
Yeah.
think it's fine to worship artists. I just don't think it's that helpful. It doesn't help me to appreciate work, to
Hmm.
think of the people who made it as otherworldly beings.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a huge impediment to making art to think that it can only be done by a select few. So, are you an artist?
I mean, technically, yeah, yeah, and like, I guess that's. Let me just
Oh
add to
no,
that.
you're only a
I'm
librarian.
only a librarian. I can only have one identity at a time, which
I
like
think you can put them in a hierarchy, you know?
I guess right now librarian would be the hierarchy, and then artist would be like the lower archy.
Right.
Sorry.
Ha 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 ha.
uh, it's fine. This is totally a very formal
Oh yeah.
experience. I do.
Yeah, good.
And I think it took me a while to get here. Like when I started college, I did figure sculpture, which was the only, like, I flippantly say that that was the only class in college that I failed, which is technically not true. But I loved it. But I failed because that coincided with a very rough time in my life, and
Hmm.
attendance was most of the grade. Um, but like I make YouTube videos, I make things for other people. I love photography, and I think like photography is just as valid of an art as anything else. But like it's still very weird to kind of identify with the term artist because it like up until the art assignment came out, like it's always felt like something that's very external. And it's something
Hmm.
that I do for my enjoyment, but not for other people's. And like for whatever reason, that just didn't seem like, oh, that's a an identity that I can claim.
Yeah.
But that's different now. I feel more affinity towards it, as it were.
Good.
So yeah,
Good. Glad to hear that.
yeah. So as an artist, what is I mentioned I do photography. What's your medium like preferred medium?
So, like when I was in college, I was a studio art and art history major, and then I made like oil paintings of like abstract lines. Some lines were focused and sharp, and some were out of focus. I didn't find them very interesting, and then I did a lot of graphite drawing. But now I tend to make art because like I don't have the time in my life to like
Yeah.
really to have a big setup and make a big mess and spend hours and hours. So like I've been doing some assignments from the book. And when I, not just to plug it, but because I actually enjoy it, I've been making some paper weavings, which is an assignment offered by Michelle Grabner.
Nice.
And it was all sort of scrap paper I had around. Like I had a auction catalog that had been sitting and collecting dust. And so I took this Keith Haring painting and then some other paper that I like painted with some ink and then let dry and cut it up and wove it together. But I've also seen some really cool, here's another one.
Nice.
But I've also seen people do some really cool ones with just junk mail, just ugly stuff. And it's amazing how you can take like a super ugly piece of print material and blend it with something else. And it's very satisfying. It's like meditative. But when I'm left to completely to my own devices and I'm not responding to an assignment, I like to collage because it's fast. Again, I'm like working. It's not like a completely blank page. So to do collage, it's great. Like you look through an old magazine, like I will order off of eBay like a stack of old magazines, like Cosmos from the 70s, which are hilarious, or old Life magazines. And then I cut them out and I sort of arrange them and then glue them down, and it's fast and it's over. And then I can go about my time. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way to jump around, because one of the things I wanted to ask you was about like what art's role in our lives can play now, especially given the world event. And while you think about that, I just want to say, hey, Jacqueline of SciJoy is in the chat.
Yay!
Yeah.
Hi,
So
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline's. Oh, you know Jacqueline.
I know Jacqueline.
Yeah. And then my friend Kathy, who is a librarian assistant over at Vancouver Island Library System,
Great.
which is that way. And then we've got someone by the name of Kelsey D and Cassie Hilton and Cooge Mouse. So, hey, y'all.
Great.
But yeah,
hey, everybody.
So the topic of what can art do for us right now, you kind of talked about how like... Well, I lost what you were saying about it.
Yeah, well, I was saying like for paper weaving, I find it to be very meditative and like I like it. It's almost like, well, so I used to hate doing the dishes pre-quarantine, but now I enjoy it because it's like a finite task and then I can accomplish something. And so it's sort of changed. And this is kind of like that, like a paper weaving, like I set up my materials, I get everything ready, I cut everything, and then I just get to weave it. I think it's like some people love to knit.
Yeah.
It's something that you can do with your hands that feels like, I don't know. I don't know about everybody else, but like I often feel during this time like super out of control of my destiny, my freedom of movement, everything. And it's when I'm making art that I feel most productive and satisfied. And I also have small children at home. So it's something that I can do with them. Although they like to do their own stuff and they don't like it when I try to dictate what kind of stuff they should make. So
Excellent.
I have to like just sort of like slyly set out materials and like, ooh, I got these new markers. Aren't they cool? And then see what happens. Because if I try to dictate it too much, they flee, which is fair enough.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because like there's been a lot of talk by other folks out there who are parents and like from like school boards and such, like, don't worry about being a teacher. Like, the kids aren't home to teach, but like, you are. I seem like, of all the people out there, you're very uniquely suited to be like the at-home art teacher. So like,
I am, but it's also, and I think a lot of parents would identify with this, like sometimes, or a lot of times, like my kids don't necessarily want to learn from me.
yeah.
They don't. They
Oh, yeah.
like they want to learn from other people, and I provide other things for them. That's all being upended since I am in charge of their education currently.
Yeah.
And we've had like some moments where I'm like, I know stuff. Let me tell it to you. But I was like that too.
Yeah.
My mom was a docent at our local art museum, and she would always like want to give me tours of an exhibition that she knew she had studied, she knew a ton about, and I'd just be like, no, I just want to look at it, and I want to make my own call, and I don't,
Yeah.
which is so rude. I'm sorry, Mom.
I mean, that's part of being a kid, though, right? I mean, granted,
Yeah.
lots of people still do that, but still,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
But art is also, I think, during this time, like a really good way to connect with other people.
yeah.
Like to do something together. And it also, like, if you and another person decide on an assignment or a project to do together and set a date, like it's way more motivating than just like sort of like wishy-washy. I don't have,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's get together
Right.
and just leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, let's like decide on an assignment, and 2 weeks later, let's show it to each other.
Yeah. Speaking of getting together and doing art, since Jacqueline is in the audience, I just wanted to show off this lovely thing. So for those of you who are unaware, Sarah would go to VidCon with the art assignment team, and there was a group of us that would get together and do art assignments and then basically bring them to VidCon. I could make myself big so that people can see this. People would do the art assignments and then bring it to VidCon, and then Sarah would check it out because what a good teacher you are. But one year, I think it was 2016, we got together and we did the Childhood Lost Object.
Lost Childhood Object by
Yeah.
Lenka Clayton. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Do you want me to give a redux of what the assignment was?
yeah.
Is so the task is to interview someone about an object that they loved when they were a child but no longer have, and you ask them to describe it to you, and ask them a lot of follow-up questions like, how heavy was it, how light, what do you remember about it, so what was the size and scale, that kind of thing. And then you make it for them based on their recollection, and make it out of stuff you have around. So obviously you might not have the precise materials you need, but that often makes for like an even more charming object. And you can do it as an exchange like you all did.
Yeah.
So, you interview each other and then you exchange your item.
Yeah. And what was funny, I thought, and what happened was I had done one for Dawn, I believe, and the person who had been assigned me actually just ended up not showing up. But Jacqueline is a superhero, and so she came with a spare thing. And when I saw it, I just about died because it used to have a chimney, but I dropped it. It's the Mr. Rogers house. And like Jacqueline knew that I was on a big Mr. Rogers kick, which has continued to this day because now I have
yay!
a trolley.
Yeah.
But like it's a great example of doing art socially. Like, because she wanted to know something about me, and she never formally interviewed me, but she watched lots of my videos and heard me not shut up about it. So excellent.
That's so nice.
It really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. I can never not say thank you enough for that. But let's see what some folks are saying. So Emma Ramirez says, I'm a fiber artist. I crochet beautiful things that I want people to wear and appreciate, but other people don't see it as art. Is there a way, this is a question for you, by the way, is there a way I could convince people otherwise?
Oh, gosh. I wouldn't bank on it. I think that it's important that you have a good understanding of what you're doing. But I being in the position of making YouTube videos about art, I get a lot of people who are like super angry about like, this isn't art. Like they have a very firm idea about what art and art isn't. And I try to like present arguments, but I also like understand the people who I'm not going to convince. And I think there is still a long history of people thinking that like art and craft are two different things. And I don't tend to, I don't draw those boundaries. And there's actually a reason why I've never made an art assignment video about that topic, because I think it's very difficult to talk about in a way that wouldn't upset anyone. I mean, I think there's like a huge spectrum, right? Like if you buy like an embroidery kit from Michael's and you follow it to a T, it's not art, but to me it is different than if you are embroidering your own design, let's say. And so there's sort of like degrees of remove. I wouldn't say that like what you've made from the embroidery kit is not art. I think that's up to you and up to me, and it can be done beautifully and interestingly, and who knows. But I think that like the most important thing about your work is to believe in it, to enjoy it. And like when you do have a receptive audience, talk about it with them, like, but if they're going to dismiss you from the start, I would say like, don't waste your time. But if you want to sort of elevate the way that, or sort of like elevate your practice a little bit, there's things you can do. Like you can use like a Squarespace type situation to make your own website that displays your work in a more professional way. You can make a little statement. You can make an artist statement that can be one sentence or two about what you're making and why. So I think there's small things that you can do to communicate to the world that you're taking your work seriously. But I think don't let the bastards get you down.
Yeah. Kelsey D replied to the comment as well, saying that they have the same issue with making comments, and that their personal rule is that if someone doesn't get it, I'm not going to argue with them. Just find the people who get it and stick with them. That said, if you're on Instagram, using hashtags and tracking feeds for those hashtags helps you find your peeps faster. So
yeah, totally. There's amazing comic artists. I mean, just absolutely incredible. So at least there's a crowd there,
right? And
who can appreciate it.
It's one of those things where like in the same realm of, although I think it's definitely art, folks who make book covers or like who illustrate children's books. Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So cool. Thanks for your question, Emma, and thanks for your answer, Sarah.
Of course.
Let's see. Well, we're still talking about that. So why? I guess sticking on the theme of talking about the art assignment. What? Sorry, I just heard a noise. I think it was probably a dog, or my partner getting home. What was the push to start doing the art assignment?
Well, I was working as a museum curator here in Indianapolis, and it was like, when you really want to become something and you work really hard to do it, and you get there and it's great, but you're so much on the train of you're ambitious. And so you're always like looking for what the next thing is. And I worked as a curator for 6 years and loved it, but I just kept feeling like I wasn't able to reach people the way I wanted to. That like when I would give museum tours, I often felt like, okay, I can connect with some people, but for other people, it's almost like there need to be a lot of work done before they got in there.
Yeah.
They were just sort of like angry and pissed off that like this abstract work was considered art and it was an insult to them. And I wanted to be able to have discussions about why artists make things and what their motivations are on a different platform than the museum. So I started to think about how I could do that. And that's when I came up with this concept for the art assignment, where I would travel around the country and ask different artists who I knew or became, found out through research or connections, to come up with an assignment that was based on their own practice. So I sort of worked on proposing that to PBS and got funding for it and quit my job and started doing it. And now it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
So I've now been doing this as long as I was at the museum.
Awesome.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But like, it seems to me like it's worked out.
Yeah.
Scratch that itch.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm having the types of discussions that I want to be having about art. And I feel like a lot of the people who would come to the programming that I would coordinate at the museum, they were great, they were intelligent, and they were already sold. Like they would come in sold, and I wanted to kind of, I like having those in the weeds discussions with people if they're polite about it and not trolls.
Yeah. That actually kind of makes me wonder, and I was trying to think of how to incorporate this into questions, but you just made it work. Because like I'm a librarian, and you are formerly a curator. And like for those of you unaware, like there's this term called GLAMS, which is galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. And we think of these as the 4 cultural institutions kind of in civil society. Do you see, like, I guess that's background information for a question that I don't have entirely formed, but like, do you see yourself, like when you started working at the museum, was it because of the love of art or the love of helping people understand the art, or like what?
It was both. It was mostly that like I had and have a very fulfilling relationship with art. Like, and I think that I was able to do that. I think some people are naturally more inclined to like art. Like I think that happens, but I also think it's by circumstance. My parents took me to see art. They like had art books around. They signed me up for art classes. Like it didn't just blossom in my head, which sometimes it can. But I think that I think that it was by meeting artists and learning about the way that they make art that I truly like had a deeper fulfillment with the art. And I feel like when you're in most galleries and museums, it's so divorced from anything human. It's so divorced from the people who make it. And sometimes they want that, but for me, it became and when art becomes so expensive, like it just can't carry that value for a lot of people. They're just going to look at it and be like, I can't appreciate this because I know that it's worth, millions of dollars, and it doesn't seem that great to me. So kind of it originated from like, I also really wanted to be able to be a better curator, and that's to be a middle person between artists and the audience, and the art and the audience, and I think like that's what librarians do. That's what people who work for archives do, is they're like trying to connect the material with an audience. And to me, I could much better serve that role as a curator, making this series, making a book from it, than I was in my museum job.
Cool. Yeah, that's a thing. So like on this channel, I get a lot of folks who are like who want to be librarians, and there seems to be kind of this misconception amongst a lot of people, also just the general public, that like the idea of wanting to be a librarian means you're going to spend your life around books, and what a great life that is. And like I don't disagree, like books are pretty darn great, but like the purpose of being a librarian is to make meaningful connections between the people and the information they need, and it sounds like you just said that's kind of like what does it for you in terms of being a curator.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so then the art assignment was kind of a logical progression of that insofar as it lets you do that in a way that scratches that itch a little bit more, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I also think like, I also felt very sort of trapped in a way in a physical museum. I just had this huge hurdle of getting people there.
Yeah.
And if you're not in the middle of a super dense city, or even if you are, it's just like, I wanted to be able to reach more people and a more diverse range of people.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. So then I guess the next question is turning from the art assignment as a YouTube channel to turning the art assignment into you are an artist as a book. Like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah. Well, so in like when I started the project, when I started visiting all these artists, I was like, I am interviewing these artists for over an hour. And then we condense it into a video that's under 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And there was so much content that didn't make it in, or that wasn't said in a snappy enough way, or maybe the dog came in the room, or, like there was so much that I felt like I wasn't able to put into all of the episodes. And so even from the beginning, I was like, oh, eventually I'd like to make a book out of some of these. So it was sort of in the back of my head from the start. And also, the internet is such an ephemeral thing.
Yeah.
Like we made 60 assignment videos, and we have a couple new ones in the works, even though we were supposed to have some new ones out already, but couldn't travel because of coronavirus. But we're working on some offsite ones that I hope will be okay. But so we made 60 assignment videos, but they're spread,
Yeah.
you can find them all. And I love that there is a free resource for them. So, but putting them all together in a book was like a way to make it real, make it physical, and to bring it together as a resource. And, there is a lot, I kind of thought when I was starting on the book, I was like, oh, well, I had these videos I had to work from for 40 of them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be easier, but it was actually not. I ended up writing it from scratch and re-listening to all the interviews and thinking about all the responses that had been made and seeing how I could help build out each assignment, sort of keeping in mind how people use the assignments. So they complement each other, I think, the videos and the book. But I love being able to exist on the internet, and, thank goodness we have this right now. But I love a book. I love a physical thing.
Yeah.
So
You brought up a good point that I experienced for the first time when I was doing my master's of like the internet is this ephemeral thing, and like in information science we talk a lot about how when you put anything or like anything to do with the internet, you put something on the internet and it's going to last forever, and like to a point, yes, but at the end of the day, neither of us owns YouTube, neither of us can promise that it's going to be there forever, and like this came as a realization to me when I was going through some of my required readings, and people would put URLs from like an article 12 years ago, like came out 12 years ago. That URL doesn't work anymore.
Of course not.
So like having a book form is just it's a good way to kind of cement that, especially because like you can take the book. I'm reaching for my iPad as if that was it.
Yeah.
But you can take the book and then you can like share it with people, and it's always going to be there for as long as the book exists. So
yeah, and I think it's important that both of them exist. I mean, when I was also feeling the book took a lot longer than I thought it was going to, as they tend to. But I was like when Tumblr was on the decline, when I was really like, oh no, a lot of these great responses that have been made, I can no longer access.
Yeah.
And and I want people to sort of be able to control their own images. But like there was a feeling of like, oh, if I don't sort of like capture this now,
Yeah.
where will it be? And yeah, we don't know. We don't know what YouTube's going to be up to. So yeah.
Well, here's hoping it stays forever, because like
Yeah.
I don't mean to gush, but I love the art assignment so much.
Oh, thanks.
It's just been a really good resource for thinking of things differently. So
Good.
we have a couple of questions from the audience.
Great.
First thing is Jacqueline asks, have you guys, also she says thanks, have you guys seen the tiny art museums? My friend is an art teacher and she just made one. I have to go, so
Yes.
she's gone now.
She's gone.
But
yeah,
have you,
the tiny, yeah, like people have been making like little museums for their gerbils and which I love. I mean, I also think like when I worked at a museum, there were certain curators, like usually old school curators, would insist on the exhibition designers like making a model, a physical model for them to like arrange their upcoming exhibitions. And I did it all digitally, but it's fun, it's cute, and I love what people have been making. I love it. I love the museum, the artwork recreations that are happening. They're so great. Yeah.
The people who are like recreating like the poses. I know there's a couple of older folks over just across the province that have been doing that. It's quality content.
Yes.
I haven't seen them yet, but I have seen those. There's a YouTube channel of people just creating environments for hamsters, like a tiny spa. It's great. I love it. Recommend looking that up.
I will do it.
Sobit21 asks, when I took creative writing in high school, we were taught to think of writing, movies, music, etc., as well as visual art as art. What do you think of that idea?
I think that's great. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm not one to draw boundaries around what art should be. I mean, like, I think if you looked at the work on the art assignment and in the book that I include, like, I would say that it's mostly more traditional in the realm of visual art. But I also like try to include a lot of sound artists, and I also want to work with like the areas that I know. So like I don't know that much about film, and I think that there are some great YouTube channels of people like that. But yeah, I think that's great. Yay! Yeah. The more art, the better.
Yeah. Kathy, I'm never gonna know how to say your last name. Says, a friend and I did meet in the middle assignment, and that ended up being a back and forth writing project for about a year afterwards.
A year? That's amazing.
Isn't it though? Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I still haven't done Meet in the Middle.
I haven't either.
I need to do it.
I'm afraid that I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna break the law. And I'm not a Canadian citizen or permanent resident yet, and I don't want to get deported. So like, we'll just not do that yet. But
I think you have to choose your friend wisely. Like you got to do the calculation first,
right?
And
who lives exactly twice the distance from me, or from like some random cornfield in Iowa from me, so that it's just totally fine.
Right.
No police, no witnesses.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for your questions, y'all. So you talked about why you decided to take it and make it a book, kind of for that permanence, which I think is great. What do you think or hope that other people will get from taking on the role of being an artist?
Well, I think in the short term, I think that it's like good for your mental health, or it can be. Like, obviously, if the idea of making art causes you great anxiety, please don't. Right. But I do think for a lot of people, like, there is sort of a hesitation to get started, but the hardest part about it is to get started. And that's what I'm hoping the assignment does, as a concept. Like, just like, don't worry about having to come up, there's so many ways to make art. How can you figure out what's right for you? This is like a way of trying on different ways of working to find something that might work for you. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe you make a paper weaving and you're like, oh God, that was painful and boring and I didn't like it. So you move on. But I think so in the short term, it's can be a really enjoyable, fulfilling way of spending your time. It could be a great thing to do with family members, or with the people with whom you're quarantining. And then in the larger sense, I think it can also, like, by doing the assignments and by making art, you also, well, by making art in general, I do think that you are able to, outside of following assignments, when you're in the presence of other people's art, it often can help you appreciate the challenge. I think that, the classic, I could do that, becomes harder to say. Like, for some people, the more they know, the more they're like, yes, I could definitely do that. And that's great, wonderful. But I also, for me, having tried to make my own art and decided not to make that like my professional avenue, I really admire people who have this huge desire to make things and get up every day and follow that and put themselves out there in this really vulnerable making way. So I think that it can improve your experience in a gallery, in a museum, like when you run across public art, when you're watching a movie. I think making art can help you enjoy those things more.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're moving. We're changing apartments because our current place is...
It's not working for you?
Not exactly.
Okay.
But so at our new place, the rent's a lot cheaper.
Good.
By the order of like $800 a month. And so,
wow.
Yeah, we figured, well, for $800 a month, we can afford a new coat of paint on the new place.
Yeah.
And I've never worked with maybe like once, but I don't often work with paint. And so even just putting a white layer of paint on the wall and like being really close to it and seeing how that, like what that's like, was really interesting. And it got me thinking like, oh wow, Bob Ross, like there's those things that he talks about in his videos of like, oh, well, if you use brush like this, it'll do this. And if you do it like this, it'll do that. Like understanding from actually doing the thing, like you said, just really changes how you can appreciate something.
Yeah.
I
also think that, like, for people who spend a lot of their time on the internet, it's like a really unbelievably enjoyable thing to use your hands and to do something physical.
Right.
Because if you're doing this all day, it's great. But then, like, for me, that's one of the challenges of this time is like with the only social connection being, being virtual. Like, what I need to do at night is to be in my body and like do something, whether it's cooking or art or listening to music, like all those things. So
I feel, I tried to make a face mask the other day. And
all right, how'd it go?
It's too small, but like it's the right shape.
Good.
I haven't attached any string because I don't have any string for but like it's too small.
Okay.
But I felt really good doing it. Like just sitting and doing something, and it like I didn't realize it, but I ended up spending 2.5 hours because I sewed it by hand.
Cool.
That was so gratifying.
Yeah.
And like in times like this, like you're saying, it can be really tiring to do a lot of this.
Right.
Which brings me to my next question. How have you been sleeping? No, I'm just playing. How has all of this... What's it like releasing a book in all of this? Yeah.
Well, it's definitely different than it would have been in that alternate timeline. I was supposed to go on a real book tour, and I had some really fun virtual events that I, like, in many ways were better and reached wider audiences than the individual city events would have. So, I'm not disappointed. I'm really not, because I think that in many ways, like, a lot of people have said like, oh, it's, more relevant than ever now. And like, I think this is worthwhile at any time. I think it's always worthwhile to do art and make art.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I know, like a lot of people who I've talked to, like some of the press that I've done, they're like, this is the perfect timing as people are stuck at home and need something to do for themselves or their kids. And it's true. I mean, it can be helpful. I mean, I know a lot of people who are so overwhelmed, they don't have they don't have the bandwidth or desire to do something like this. But it's been good. It's been a distraction, honestly. And it's been a way to kind of focus. And it's actually like I've sort of been responding to the art assignments more than I have in years past, because I was always so busy making the videos, and I'm still busy making the videos. Got a new one coming out Thursday.
Oh, cool.
It's a real nail biter. It was supposed to come out last Thursday, but
snap.
we've got some issues. But yeah, so I'm making work more. So it's been good. It's been good.
Good.
I'm ready. I'll be ready for this to be over. And I was looking forward to, like, since so much of what I do is on the internet, I was looking forward to having some real life things.
Yeah.
But there will be an after eventually.
Yeah. Well, I was watching one of the videos that you had released, one of the streams that you had done for the book release. And you mentioned something that I'd never thought about, or John had mentioned something that I had never thought about, like, because it just never occurred to me that you don't like being on camera.
Yeah.
Fair. It just had never occurred to me because, like, and like when I think about it, like, you do definitely. I appreciate the art assignment for what it is, because it's very not informal, it's very informational.
Yeah.
And like, you talk about art and the different things behind art and the history behind art in a way that's like really plain, in a way that I can get. And I also had just never thought about, like, the enjoyment factor of that perhaps not being there.
Well, I mean, I enjoy it way more now. And like, this is fine. Like, I am totally comfortable doing this, because like, I like the weird thing about making YouTube videos, which is like not having the immediate audience.
Yes.
That's weird. And it just takes time. So like, anyone who makes YouTube videos, I mean, it's a skill you learn over time, like pretending that someone is there.
Yeah.
But I felt, and it's a weird, like, when you start, it's awkward. Like, if I look at the early art assignment videos, like, I can feel my discomfort, and it hurts.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, a lot of it, and I started being on camera because I felt like successful YouTube had a consistent personality.
Yes. Yes.
And I learned that from watching John and Hank. But I also know what I like to watch. And I also like came from the museum world where they would create videos that had no personality.
Oh yeah. Right.
It would just be that institutional voice. And so if I was going to come and do this, it was going to be factual. I was, working with PBS, like the point is to educate, but you can't talk about art without some opinion.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not, or it's boring.
Yeah.
If it's not your opinion, you're talking about somebody else's opinion. So I'd rather stand behind my own.
I feel that was. So when I did my master's, like, one of my final projects was like, I want to get more libraries on YouTube. And like right now, the way that most libraries use YouTube or online video is like, oh, this is a place for us to put stuff, but like not actually use it or actively think about like a content strategy or like personalities or things like that.
Right.
And it still happens. I haven't solved the problem yet, but I feel you. And then
I feel like Bon Appetit is such a good example.
Perfect.
Of like the people, like, to me, there could be a library equivalent of that. And maybe there is that I just don't know about. It's just like, I think that's a good model, because the people who are now their stars didn't want to be YouTube stars.
No.
They like to cook, and they were the producers of that are brilliant. but I can see the library version of that, where like you get to know a librarian, you know what they, like, they want to
Yeah.
show you something this
Hmm.
week, or,
Yeah, and that's like, and I'm not some wild success like me and my 4.1 thousand subscribers, but
no, it's
like,
good.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
I,
And
I'd be proud of that.
the interactions that I have with people on my channel are genuine and
Yeah.
delightful. And I think obviously there's also that weird thing where I'm a guy, and so I have to deal with a lot less negativity that exists
Oh,
on the
yeah.
internet. And I think that there are a lot of librarians out there who are
Aren't
worried about
willing.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's funny. I mean, it is a totally different thing, and I mean, I feel like part of my um art assignment persona, like I don't talk about my personal life really, you know?
mhm,
I don't I think I mean, I get plenty of rude comments
yeah.
that of course I like remember always,
Right.
because you remember the horrible ones.
Hmm.
But like the yeah, it's just I feel like if there is a way to do it that you can protect yourself, but that's only to a certain point.
Yeah.
Like that's also why it's nice to have a smaller community,
Hmm.
because it can stay civil. Like if it gets
Yeah.
too big,
Yeah. Critical mass is
yeah,
horrible.
yeah,
Like I feel, and it's such a double edged sword though, because like we watch someone like Emily,
yeah,
just going wild on the Brain Scoop, and like yeah,
yeah,
we just like I'm all about cheering her because she does such great stuff, and
yeah.
she deserves all of the love and the attention and the fair and just compensation for it. But like the other side is she doesn't deserve all the hate that she gets.
Oh God, no, no.
So
Oh, it's awful.
yeah, but
Yeah,
she's great, you're
but
great, so it's all fine.
well, I feel like it's fine until it's not, and
Exactly,
then
exactly.
and then like you can't ever like you can't ever give anybody a hard time for deciding that they don't want that anymore. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to try and get Katie Morton on here
Oh,
in the
good.
next couple of
Yeah.
weeks. Gonna figure
Good.
what better time to feature a therapist
Yeah.
on YouTube.
She's
But
awesome.
she's great. So we'll see how that goes. But
Good.
yeah, I think that's about it for my questions. I'm just going to check. I thought someone posted. Oh, so Cassie Hilton asks, do you have any advice for someone who wants to become a professional artist?
A professional artist. I think this is obvious. Well, it depends on where you are. A few things I would do is number one, you have to focus on your work, obviously. And number two, you do need to get to know your art community,
Hmm.
and like that can be and develop one, and it's going to be very different depending on where you are physically, where you are in life, how old you are, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But even small towns can have pretty amazing art communities. So I think sometimes that can involve like volunteering at a local arts center, or just going to the events and like being a regular fixture there, and
Yeah.
meeting other artists, talking to them about your work. So that those are like some basic things that you're probably already doing, and you're like, yeah, whatever, I got that. But but I think it's not only going to be better for your career
Hmm.
as a professional artist. Networking is such a terrible term, but it's not just for your career. It's also better for you.
Yeah.
It's better for your work, to like have a sense of who's going to be seeing it. Everybody wins. Networking is gross, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Is yeah. Yeah. Kathy also asked a question way at the beginning that I forgot. How do you think, and I think this is a great question, how do you think that the myriad of mixed emotions brought on by all of this will affect the art world?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I most of the artists who I follow and have talked to, because I've like, been catching up with a lot of the artists in the book, just communicating with them about the book release and everything. Some, about half are still sort of paralyzed and not really making work, which I
Hmm.
understand. And
Yeah.
some of them are super productive. And I think a lot of it depends on where they are, the type of work they make. whether they can, whether they can do the kind of work that they're used to doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot of artists who are thinking of this as a wonderful opportunity. Obviously, terrible circumstances,
Right.
but artists have always made work in adversity. And so I think we'll see a lot of work come out of it. But then in a larger sense, I think it's going to be devastating for the art market. And
Oh,
in
yeah.
some ways that I will welcome
Yeah.
because it was way overinflated.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. But I also feel terrible for the galleries that won't make it,
Yeah.
small galleries that won't make it. So I think the art market is one thing, but art. I mean, I'm actually really excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned in one of the art assignments when you were talking about art and mental illness
Yeah.
is you talked about how like it's not a sign, like it's not the tormented genius basically. The art is not an end product of that. I think maybe that's what you
Well, I
said.
did two videos. I
Okay.
did the truth of the tortured artist and the myth of the tortured artist.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
played both sides.
All right, because I was so
Yeah.
sneaky. It got me thinking about how like while it might not be, or it is not, you don't have to be a tortured soul to be a good artist, but I
No.
think art helps people cope perhaps with their demons.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
which we talked
Like
about
I
earlier.
think art can be a magnificent coping mechanism in all times, and but I also, yeah, I think it's you, but you don't have to be tortured to do
Yeah,
it. I
right.
know, and actually, like a lot of the artists in the book are like pretty happy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to realize that assigning yourself to being an artist doesn't mean darkness
Yeah, for sure.
necessarily. It might.
Who knows? Not our problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're just about at time, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
say thank you again so much for
Well,
being
and thank
here.
you, Peter.
Of course.
I love what you do, and I love how thoughtful you are about everything.
I try.
And thank you for being part of the art assignment community.
Yeah, of course.
And I love your work and the way that you think about being a librarian as being so much wider than like any one physical place,
Mm,
like about the practice. And yeah,
yeah,
thanks for sharing that
you're
on
welcome.
YouTube. Yeah,
Yeah.
and wider.
But yeah. I'm just gonna say bye everyone, and I'm gonna
Bye.
end the stream. I'll see you all later.